Welcome to another How to Succeed podcast, the show that helps you get to the top and stay there. This is How to Succeed at Starting Interesting Sales Conversations. The following podcast is copyrighted by Sandler Systems, Inc. and protected by U.S. copyright laws. Sandler is the worldwide leader in sales, management, and customer service training with over 200 locations. You can subscribe to this podcast anywhere you're listening to it right now and share it with somebody that you think needs to hear it. I'm your host, Mike Montague. I am Director of Community Engagement at Sandler. And my guest this week is Kyle Jepson. He is an instructor in the HubSpot Academy and a partner with us here at HubSpot. If you don't know who they are, they're a global leader in marketing automation, CRM platform. They're the hub for all of the stuff that you would do in business development and sales and customer service. So I'm very excited to talk to Kyle, my co-presenter and co-instructor in the course, Starting Interesting Sales Conversations. Kyle, welcome to the podcast. Tell us a little bit about the course here, Starting Interesting Sales Conversations, and what did we cover here?
Yeah. So I'm super excited about this course, super excited to be here today. This is, I believe, the second course HubSpot Academy has partnered with Sandler on, and it was great to be involved in it, working with you, Mike. And I just love this little course so much because it's not very long, but it really gets at the heart of in the title, we say starting interesting sales conversations. And it's important that your conversations are interesting to the person you're reaching out to. I feel like so often salespeople are reaching out and they're giving their same old tired pitch, not personalizing it at all, and just getting hung up on all the time. And this is going to teach you how to make what you're sharing relevant, because hopefully the person you're reaching out to, you have reason to believe it's relevant, and to make it interesting to them so they actually ask you questions and want to learn more. And that is such a game changer for anyone who's in a frontline sales role.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. And before we get too far, we should probably tell people they can go take the course for free. Yeah. If you're already a member of the HubSpot Academy, just search for Starting Interesting Sales Conversations. If you're not, go to sandler.com/starting conversations. The link is below wherever you're listening or watching to this, and you can get signed up for free. It's a 6-video course. We have some other additional resources and stuff. So like Kyle said, not a lot of time, but there is jam-packed information in here I love what you said, starting interesting conversations for the buyer, but also starting interesting conversations for the seller, because sometimes I think salespeople that don't know any better maybe start with, how are you today? Did I catch you at a good time? How's the weather? How about that sports ball game last night? And those sometimes can be interesting conversations, but they're not relevant to the sales process or to the buyer's needs. And then you have to awkwardly kind of transition back. So can you start with some of the ideal attitudes we put in there of like what we're really trying to accomplish?
Well, yeah. And just like on those not interesting conversations you were talking about, it's not interesting for either party. And I know for me as a person who sometimes receives sales calls, I'm just while you're asking me about the weather, what I'm wondering is, what does this guy actually want, right? Like, can we just get to it? And if I'm the seller and I'm asking these awkward questions, I'm just wondering, how long do I have until you hang up on me? And so neither person is happy, right? Neither person is engaged in what we're actually talking about. And so in this lesson we made, where we really help you get to the meat of the conversation quickly and in a way that will hook the person so that they'll want to know more. So they'll get some sense that you were there to provide value, not just to berate them into giving you money. And I think that's really powerful. I think my favorite concept in here is this idea of equal business stature. And I feel like salespeople in general, or at least I know when I was in sales, really struggle with this. I feel like anytime I called someone, I either came groveling to them, begging them to give me just a little bit of time, or I came in thinking they know nothing and I'm here to teach them they're doing it all wrong and that we can save them, right? And neither of those is going to work very well. Optimally, you want to meet the people you're reaching out to as a peer. And I think this lesson we've created will really give you the confidence to do that. It'll help you understand how to position what you're offering in a relevant way, and in really short amount of time, just get the conversation moving in a truly interesting direction, and not be bogged down in all that other stuff.
Yeah, I think people that have gone through Sandler training will recognize a lot of the lessons in this course. So things like equal business stature and things like the hook questions you already kind of mentioned.
Yeah.
We'll dive more into that when we get to technique. But also I thought the pattern interrupt was one for me that was really important to get in there, because going back to those other things, they're patterns. When somebody asks you about the weather, you already have, it's whatever, it's cold outside. And you have this pattern of however you answer that, right? If somebody says, how are you doing today? You're fine. And you move on, and whatever your standard response is, it's a pattern. And if we want to get a prospect's attention, we need to break that pattern in some way that's interesting, relevant, and credible to the buyer, so that we maintain equal business stature and we accomplish something. I think we did a really cool job of talking about how we do some of those things.
Yeah. And I love this idea of the pattern interrupt. And if you think about patterns, right, if you're asking a question like, how's the weather? You are encouraging the person to put their brain onto autopilot, right? They have their standard ready to go response to how is the weather? And guess what? Their autopilot also has a response to salespeople, which is sorry, not interested, goodbye, And so you got to get away from that autopilot. That is not the territory you want to be in. You want to get their brain turned on and engaging and thinking and mulling over the stuff you're saying and feeling feelings and having ideas, not just you're delivering a rote script that is going to end poorly for you. But yeah, I love in this course, you, Mike, you share examples, all these different techniques, but here is hypothetically, if I was calling a company in this industry, here's what I might say. And we have those words and speech bubbles in slides that you can see and you can study, and not that you should, if people listening to this, if you take this course, if you go through the content, you should not just parrot Mike verbatim. You got to figure out how to apply these things to your own buyer. But I think it's going to be a really solid starting point that's going to be much better than whatever the typical sales approach is.
Yeah, I think that part takes us right to behavior, that we put in kind of 3 benchmarks for you to look at. And I like thinking about these as flags that we got to hit, or check-in points on our map, that if we hit these 3 things, we're going to have an interesting and relevant conversation. The first one we've already talked about is an opening that's relevant and credible. If we have a great opening question, we get their attention and we get permission to have a longer discussion, then we can get into the problems that we solve for them. And I think that's another second big misconception that salespeople have, is they often feel they have to defend and justify their offerings first off, when really what people want is what's in it for me? How can you help me in the conversation? I think that one's huge. We can talk more about that. But the third one then is some sort of hook question. And we put 4 different types of questions that you can ask at the end to then start a dialogue and get out of your kind of pitch and into a conversation. And I think if you just think about those 3 things, then you don't need scripts. You just got to think, how am I going to, with this buyer, connect, like figure out what's in it for them, and then get them into a conversation.
Yeah. And on the what's in it for me piece, I think for me, as I was recording the videos for this content, my favorite part to record is there's this one part where I give a bad example of like a statement or a pitch. And it sounds just like, you can totally imagine going to the website of an engineering firm and seeing this as their mission statement. But I ramble off this long thing, and then I ask, can you say what's in it for the customer? And I can't, right? I just said this thing. It's like a solid paragraph of value statements, I guess, but they're so generic and they're so rapid fire, just gobbledygook in the jargon and stuff. And it just, you're the person you're talking to on the phone will have no idea what your value is, right? And yet,
I appreciate you taking one for the team and doing the bad one, so that I look like the salesperson that knows what they're talking about.
Right.
So I promise everybody, Kyle is a better salesperson than that. He was reading a script that we wrote together to make it sound.
Yeah. But it's just, I mean, I think, again, if you take a minute to think about how you as a seller feel when you're on the phone with a new prospect, someone you're talking to the first time, it's reasonable to be nervous, and it's reasonable to lean into your company's strengths. That is the obvious choice I think most salespeople make, but it just doesn't work, right? You're gonna ramble. You're gonna say a lot of things that you're answering questions that the person hasn't asked yet. And the idea is to get them to ask those questions and talking about their needs and then connecting the value you offer to those needs. But I think a recurring theme, something we say multiple times through this course, is people don't care about your products until they understand what need you're trying to help them with, a problem they need to overcome or a goal they're trying to achieve. And if you can get them talking about that, then you can come in and you can share how you can help them get there. But it's all about them. People don't care about what you're saying until they know that you're relevant to them.
Yeah, I would add on to that and say a couple of things that it makes sense for me when I'm the seller. Number one is, if I can tell their story better than they can tell it themselves, it brings instant credibility to me. So I don't have to say how great I am. If I can describe what's going on in Kyle's world right now and without being there, he's going to go, wow, Mike's done this before. Like he's a mind reader. He has something. He has camera set up in my house. He's paying it, and he gets me. If I'm talking about me, then Kyle's sitting there thinking he doesn't get me. He doesn't know anything about me. And I think that's kind of why we came together on this course too, is point number 2 here is that's what your HubSpot CRM and platform is for. So you can have all this data of the white papers they downloaded, or you can go and do research on their company. You can look at the past history or other decision makers, and you can use all of this research that you should be calling informed. There shouldn't be a cold call to a random name and number that you know nothing about in today's world. Can you talk a little bit maybe about how HubSpot or the CRM would aid in having those relevant conversations and telling their story?
For sure. So I mean, one thing that made HubSpot pretty different from the start when we first came into the CRM space is we were really trying to solve for the rep's experience. A lot of CRMs are built for the VP of sales, the sales manager. How can we get our monthly reports out of this? How can we see how we're trending against our goals? We really wanted to give reps an ability to understand the person they're reaching out to, the company they're trying to work with, the history of what's gone on. And so when you look at a record inside HubSpot, for example, a contact record that represents a person, kind of the biggest chunk of real estate is this column right in the middle that shows this chronological timeline of all the interactions they've had with your company. And I mean, depending on how you're using HubSpot, which parts of it you have, this could be marketing emails they've opened. It could be website pages they visited. It could be forms they've submitted. And then if you're integrating HubSpot with other things, it can be all your other systems and how they've interacted there. And you can just start to get a sense of, has this person expressed interest without explicitly asking for help, or are other people on my team in contact with them? I think probably nothing is worse, regardless of whether you're in sales or customer service or any other client-facing role, than double hitting people, right? Like, I just talked to someone from your company yesterday. Why are you calling me?
Oh yeah, that's the worst.
And just making sure it's a coordinated effort that's relevant and timely is really what HubSpot is all about, trying to give you that context so you have that inside scoop. And I mean, in the course we mentioned, if someone has downloaded a white paper, for instance, you can call and just ask them for feedback on the white paper, right? And that's going to be a very different conversation than if they went to the website and filled out the contact sales form, right? Now, don't ask them about the white paper. Just say, hey, what can I do to help, right? You asked me to come, here I am. And I think just having that context is so important and really a non-negotiable here in the 21st century. Gone are the days when you can just grab a phone book and call some folks and hope you get lucky. There's so much rich data that you should be using as a seller. I think it's easy to talk about, the internet has empowered buyers and they have all the information. They don't need salespeople anymore, but the internet has empowered salespeople too. We know a lot of things about the buyers. We know which pages they've consumed. And so now we can use that as the starting point for our conversation instead of having to cover a bunch of stuff they maybe already know. You can come in and your whole job is help them to sift through all that information they've been looking at and connect your solutions to their problems and figure out a way forward. You you can consult with them on that. And that's where that equal business stature really comes in, I think.
I love that. I love that you highlighted empowering sellers. Dan Tyre and I talked about that in our other HubSpot course with hybrid selling, of how you can really use all these tools in a modern environment to take advantage of all that. But also you highlighted making this conversation relevant with those action items. I'm thinking, if you're selling commercial roofs and a prospect has opened your green roof email, clicked on the green roof webpage and downloaded the white paper about green roofs, you could say, hey, saw that you downloaded the white paper. Did you get it? Did it go to spam? Did you get a chance to read it yet? Do you have any questions about green roofs that it didn't answer? And you could start a really interesting sales conversation. They're probably going to land in one of those three buckets. And then you can help them from there. And if you haven't, you can still go out and do your research and start with an interesting conversation of saying, our typical buyers have one of three problems. They're either looking to re-roof a building, they got a new construction, or they want to upgrade, repair, or maybe look at a green roof for their building. Which one of those do you fall into? And it just leads to better conversations than, hey, we're the world's leading expert on green roofs and we've done over 10,000 blah blah blah, and talking about your credibility. And so I want to finish this conversation with the last part of the course, which is those questions you can ask, those hook questions. We provided 4 different kinds. We don't need to cover them all here, but I think they're asking a good question is really the key to being a good salesperson. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. And one thing I think salespeople fail to appreciate is that you as a salesperson really are an expert in a particular part of whatever industry you're working in, right? Yes, when you're on the phone with a CEO or a VP of something, they are an expert in their business. They know what's going on there better than you possibly can. But you have talked to hundreds of people in their exact same role who have faced very similar problems, and you have seen what has worked and what has not worked. That's a perspective they don't have. And so, I mean, to tie this back to the hook questions and things, you can share that, right? You can, as you find out more about their situation, you can say, oh yeah, I when I've talked to other VPs of sales who are facing this particular issue, they often say they've tried this thing. Have you thought about that? Or I often see them making this very crucial mistake. You haven't done that, certainly, right? And you can start to get them to really, whoa, now we're getting them to pause and really reflect on their situation and to start to realize, whoa, this salesperson is legit, right? Like, this guy knows what he's talking about. He's seen this movie before in a way that I have not. And here I am wondering how it's going to end. And he's coming in, helping me get to the happy ending, right? Instead of the tragic one. And I think, I don't know, you as a salesperson, as you talk to all these people, whether you close them or not, whether it goes well for you or not, you get more insights into the state of the industry, into how the economy is impacting these companies, how people are adapting or failing to adapt. And every bit of that, you can then bring into your future conversations and say, like, hey, here's a thing that happened once. Does that match what's happening with you? And now it really is like you have a crystal ball or a mind reader or something, because, whoa, we were just in a meeting last week and we were asking these same questions and coming to the same conclusions. And now this guy's maybe making me rethink the conclusions we came to. That's where, as a salesperson, you have a real advantage, I think.
Yeah, I think you build more credibility with a good question than you do with a good answer. And most people don't realize that. Kyle did a great job of demonstrating 2 of the 4 techniques that we put in the course. The third party story is the one where I think it's a funny point, but if you tell somebody else that they're having a problem, like, hey, I know you have downtime in your manufacturing process because you're an idiot and you haven't figured out how to fix it, you're talking down to them. But if you say, like, hey, I work with other manufacturers, sometimes they find that they have downtime because of X, Y, and Z. You've probably already figured out a way to solve that, though, haven't you? Then the person can say, oh, no, man, we're still working on that. Or they can say, oh, yeah, we got that taken care of. We used X, Y, and Z to fix that. and you're like, okay, great, no harm, no foul, and you can move along, they're not a very good prospect for you. I think the third party story is really great for credibility and for creating this sort of equal business stature where they're not feeling like you're talking down to them or you're trying to sell them anything. You're just bringing up things for them to think about. The other one you did great was the presumptive question, and that one's my favorite. We always kind of laugh at this one, but it can be a little bit of a weapon. So I would say use this one scarcely.
Right.
But if they are having problems, you could say something like, I'm sure when this problem came up, you contacted your current vendor and they came out right away and solved it because your warehouse was down. And they go, well, no, they didn't come out.
They never come out.
What?
People come out? What?
Yeah. And then
would you have come out if I was working for you, working with you?
Right. It brings up a lot of interesting things without saying directly, like, our service is better. If I just say our service is better, they can't believe it. I'm a salesperson. Everybody says their service was great. The person who's not coming out said their service was great. Right. And I think there's just really interesting things to dive into there. So I hope people enjoy it in the course. Again, you can just search for it in HubSpot Academy or go to sandler.com/starting conversations. And the link is right there for you. You can register for it and then get into the HubSpot Academy and take the course. 6 quick video lessons, a bunch of additional resources, including a Sandler 30-second commercial creator. So you can write your own story there that will hook buyers and start better conversations. Any other final thoughts there, Kyle?
No, I just want to encourage everyone to check it out. Again, it's not a huge investment in your time. And I think the dividends from the small investment of time will be huge. It'll give you things to think about. It'll help you approach your initial conversations with people in a very different way. And hopefully if you've been stuck, it'll help you get unstuck and find a new way forward. That's my biggest hope for this.
Awesome. Once again, we're talking with Kyle Jepson, instructor in the HubSpot Academy and co-instructor with me in this course, Starting Interesting Sales Conversations. Now, to make this conversation a little more interesting, Kyle, I want to get to know you better. So here's a fun question. How do you define success at this point in your career?
Honestly, I'm a little bit of a ham. And so nothing means more to me than when someone reaches out and says, hey, Kyle, this piece of content you created had this impact on me, right? I at this point, I've been at HubSpot Academy almost 7 years. I own about 70 lessons in there. And mostly I just produce them and put them out into the world and hope they do some good. And I can see some data about, this many people viewed it or whatever. But when someone takes the time to reach out and say, this had an impact on me, that's the moment when I actually know I did my job well, right? None of the numbers and things tell me that nearly as clearly. So I love it when I can hear people's stories about the real problems they're able to solve with the education I've created.
And was there a biggest failure you're most proud of, or a particularly hard lesson learned that you had to get over in order to be successful?
So this is not a story I share often. I find it pretty embarrassing, but when I very first joined the HubSpot Academy team, the team was pretty small then. They had a handful of lessons and things. And I felt like the education was really good. Like the content that was covered was great, but it wasn't as engaging and interesting as I wanted it to be. And I had this idea, like, what if we tried to make it funny? And there's a guy at HubSpot, he's actually on our sales team, but he had a short career in stand-up comedy, got himself like a one-time special on Comedy Central. There's a woman who sends a very, very funny internal newsletter once a week. There are just a few folks who are kind of famously, doing funny things on YouTube or whatever. This group of 4 or 5, the funny ones at HubSpot, right? And I called a meeting, I bought lunch, and I said, okay, here's the stuff I want to teach. Now, how do I make it funny? And they all just like, are you kidding me? Like, that's not how humor works. And I really just thought, like, we can just insert jokes and that'll make it good. And fast forward almost 7 years. And what I've learned is what makes content engaging is being yourself, right? And I occasionally happen to be funny just naturally, right? And sometimes without meaning to be. But I think what people really want is genuineness, right? So if you're funny, be funny. If you're insightful, be insightful. If you're sentimental, be sentimental. And people who like that will connect with you. I think trying to take other people, like pieces of other people's personality and bring it into yourself is just it's doomed to failure. And that was, I mean, I got a good lunch out of it, but it was an awful meeting. It was really painful start to finish.
It is a great lesson for salespeople too, though, because I think salespeople think the same thing, that I have to be this business card slinging, fast talking salesperson. And that's not true. Most of the time, introverts are better salespeople because they listen and they pay attention and they're sensitive to what the other person is feeling, and they can be empathetic and learn from all of that. But really, it's whatever your style is, and what you're going to be most successful with, because that's authentic and that's what draws people in and works for you.
Yeah, it makes me think, when I was first out of college, I was a BDR, basically just this inside sales job. And after I'd been on the team a while, we hired another person, and it was this girl who was also straight out of college and so shy and kind of like adorable, but like, well, all of us were like, we hired her, she's gonna get eaten alive, right? Like, we call people all the time and they tell us to get lost, but she was just so disarming, right? She did way better than the rest of us because she was just so nice, and she got on the phone and she was not at all what people were expecting in a sales call, right? Here's just this adorable 20-something girl who just wants to help, and she left us all behind. And so it's just this really important lesson of like, oh, maybe we've been misthinking what a good salesperson looks like.
I think that happens a lot because there's this like backwards law, counterintuitive thing with salespeople, that the good salespeople you don't see as salespeople. That stereotype is so ingrained that when you go, oh man, that's a salesperson, you picture that person that's fast talking and quick. But when you don't even realize they're a salesperson, that's who the real ninjas are. And they're great. So last question here for you on the bio. Do you have a favorite quote, motto, or mantra?
I do, and I've forgotten who said it. I should Google it and look it up. But some smart person once said that education is not the filling of a bucket, but the lighting of a fire. And I really like that idea. And this too could be applied to sales. Sales and education. Sales is an education role, basically. And like if you, I mean, certainly, probably, we've all had teachers who clearly viewed their job as, I'm just going to stuff stuff into your head, right? You are a bucket and I'm going to fill you. And like, how much did you actually retain from that, right? And then hopefully everyone has also had a teacher that really lit a fire, made them, right? Like at the end of 10th grade history, I thought I wanted to be a history teacher because I was so excited about world history. And then at the end of 11th grade history, I never wanted to see a history book again because so many facts and numbers had been stuffed into my head that I didn't want there. And I feel like it's an important thing for anyone to remember if you're in any sort of educational role, whether it's sales or actual education or anything else, being a parent even, you want to try to light fires, not fill buckets.
I love that. All right, let's wrap it up for everybody in a nice big bow. 3 quick ones. 1, attitude, behavior, and technique. We'll start with the attitude. What would you like people to believe leaving the podcast?
I want you to believe that you can change if you need to change. And I want you to be open to the fact that you probably do need to change. Even if you've been really successful in sales or whatever role you're in for 5 or 10 years, 5 or 10 years is a long time now. And time to adapt, time to try something new. Don't ever just rest on your laurels and think that worked in 2008 is going to work in 2028, because it certainly will not.
Nice. 1 behavior or action item you would like people to do.
Make time to learn things. My main perception of salespeople is they're too busy to better themselves. But honestly, the little bit of time you take out of actually selling to upskill, whether that's through Sandler or HubSpot Academy or your favorite blog or reading a book or even asking a mentor for advice, then the rest of the time you spend selling, you'll actually be more effective. So it's worth the trade-off.
Love that. And finally, the best technique, tool, or hack to use. Feel free to shamelessly plug HubSpot if you want.
HubSpot is great. I'm all for everyone using HubSpot. I recognize that salespeople don't typically get to choose what CRM they're using, though. I love this 30-second commercial creator Sandler created, and that's in this lesson. I mean, even if you want to just skip all the videos and just go straight to that and do this little project to help you build that, I think it's going to open doors for you.
Yeah, I love that one too. Just remember, whenever you're writing a script or a 30-second commercial, it's not going to be a broadcast 30-second commercial most of the time. It's going to be a conversation with a human. And that means that like tonality matters much more than the words you put on the paper. But I think we gave you a great outline of some benchmarks to hit and things to think about when you're starting your next sales conversation. So again, go to Sandler.com/starting conversations, or if you're already in the HubSpot Academy, just search for Starting Interesting Sales Conversations, and we will see you in the course. Like Kyle said, we love to hear feedback. So connect with us on LinkedIn or let us know what you thought, or if you have any questions, you can do that in there as well. For more information on Sandler, you can get any of our free resources at Sandler.com. And HubSpot is our partner that we chose for our CRM here at Sandler. So if you want more information about HubSpot, you can reach out to them directly at HubSpot.com, or ask your local Sandler trainer about HubSpot. They're using it, and see how they can help you get started there as well. As always, leave us a review on iTunes, Google Podcast. Thank you for listening. And remember, whatever you are, be a good one. The How to Succeed podcast is brought to you by Sandler, the worldwide leader in sales, management, and customer service training. More information at Sandler.com.
The Sandler Summit returns in 2023. Each new event builds exponentially upon the energy and success of the prior year. The 2022 Sandler Summit event was a huge success for everyone who attended, so don't miss the next one. Buy your tickets to the Sandler Summit at Sandler.com/summit.